Hello, this is Dr. Schrader. I'm going to talk to you today about the water process. And when we talk about pollutants and we talk about issues, let's say the Flint lead water crisis. So they tested the pipes in Flint and they found that there was high contents of lead. So the question becomes, what is the source of the pollution? What caused the lead in the pipes? And in the oil industry, they define each part of the oil exploration process. There's three parts. They call it the upstream, the midstream, and the downstream. So in the oil industry, upstream means that's you're drilling for the oil, and the midstream are the pipelines that convey the oil from the wellhead down to the refinery, and downstream is the refined finished product. So in water treatment, we have a similar scheme. Um, so I'll call it upstream, midstream, and downstream, but it's a little bit different. So uh, when we're talking about contaminants and sources of pollution, so you turn on your tap and you're contaminated. We have to look at what's going on both upstream, midstream, and downstream. So right now I'll talk about upstream real quick. So here I am, and if you see over my shoulder here, what you see Lake Michigan. So there's Lake Michigan, and Lake Michigan is the water source for the city of Racine, among other um, cities along its shore. Chicago, Milwaukee are also draw their water out of Lake Michigan. So Lake Michigan would be considered an upstream. So this is the raw water source, is Lake Michigan. Um, and other municipalities will use, for example, a river. So further west, you may use the Fox River or the Rock River, or as you get further down, where I grew up in St. Louis, it was the Mississippi River and the Missouri River. When I lived in a more rural area, they use groundwater sources as sources of water. So that upstream source, it could be the lake, could be a river, could be well water, but that is the raw water. So let's say I'm Flint and I've got a contaminant in the water. Well, where's that contaminant coming from? And it could be from my source. So in the case of Flint, for example, they noticed the lead in the water when they switched water sources. They had been buying their water from the city of Detroit, who got it out of Lake Huron. Um, and what they were is they were on the midstream part of Detroit's system because it had already come out and went to the treatment plant and was in the distribution system when they were buying it from Detroit. They switched instead to the Flint River, which feeds the agricultural area down in Nathuma, Michigan, and goes down to Flint, and then eventually dumps into Saginaw Bay and Lake Huron. But they were tapping off the Flint River directly. So they went from a midstream source to an upstream source of water. So was Flint River contaminated? Was the river itself, did it have heavy metals and lead and things like that? So the first place you look when you start talking about contaminants is the source of water itself. Is the source contaminated? I know when I lived in the middle area down in southeast Missouri, they would actually take a lot of water from the abandoned lead mines in the area. And that was highly contaminated water because obviously it's an abandoned lead mine and it was a highly mined area. So a lot of the groundwater and underground sources were very contaminated. So the lead would end right there. We have to switch the upstream water source to get rid of the lead. Switch that, and we go. So the first place you're going to look is your water source on here, your upstream. So we talk about contaminants. The first source we're going to look at is where we're getting the water from. So if suddenly Racine's got a lead issue, is there something going on in the lake? Is the lake got some contamination? And if the lake is contaminated itself, then we have to switch water source. We don't change anything else, because the further we get along the process, the more expensive it's going to get. So part two, I'll talk about midstream, and then I'll talk about downstream.